Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to have you here this afternoon to share and pick up some ideas and give some ideas on using iPad for your instruction and other purposes that would facilitate your teaching. So thank you for being here, and special thanks to Trevor Milliron and Joel Kalin for their willingness to facilitate this session for us. Joel?
And the key word is facilitate, because I am not really a techie person. I see a number of people here who are much more techie than I am, will ever be. So you know more than I do about any number of these things. I want to just talk a little bit about how some of the software I've explored and how I have used a couple of those things in some of my classes and some of the ideas I've had and thoughts I've had. And Trevor's going to show some videos and talk a little bit about what he's been doing, and then we'll have quite a bit of time to give and take and share back and forth. I've always been kind of, as far as my thinking about technology, I've always, even though I've been an Apple enthusiast for a long time, I feel I should use the tool that works. And it's, you know, to me, it's not a matter of brand loyalty or a particular device that you have to get loyal to, but does the tool do what you need it to do to help you and to help you to get something done. So in my desktop publishing class, which I teach in the Student Media Lab, which is downstairs in the Paul Kahn Student Union, we have 16 student computers and then one faculty computer or instructor computer. The instructor computer has the InDesign software on it, which is what I teach in that class largely. I teach design principles and also teach how to use that program. I discovered that Kindle has, Amazon Kindle has the textbook we use available for Kindle. So I went ahead and got it. And when I teach, I frequently will plug in the iPad to the projector and then have the InDesign program on the computer. And then I can flip back and forth with the students so that when we're working on a particular section, like when we were working this week with the importing and creating graphics or modifying graphics, I can say, okay, you know, here's what we're going to be looking at in lesson. And, you know, they can look in their own textbook and see it. It's just kind of handy to be able to toss it up there. And then I hit the button and I'm showing them what I'm going to talk about. And I can kind of keep track of it myself by looking at where I am in the lesson, what I want to emphasize, what I want to make sure they get. And if for some reason they need to see something, I can pop this back up. So that's one thing I've been doing. It's it's not a sophisticated program. I mean, Kindle is just a reader, a book reader. But I found it's very handy to be able to put the textbook, a page from the textbook, up on the screen and talk about it, especially in this kind of class where it's, you know, we're working through tutorials. And if they get stuck on something especially, it might be helpful for me to talk through it and say, okay, what are they saying here? What are they trying to do here? So that's one thing I found handy. I found a couple of other Kindle textbooks that I've used, and the main negative I found is a lot of the older Kindle textbooks don't have page numbers. And so I was using one for my religion capstone class last spring, and it was terrific to have the book on my iPad, but it didn't. This was one that didn't have page numbers, so I would say, okay, somewhere around the middle of chapter 5 is one. So I had to keep going back to the paper version to make sure I was on. So that was kind of a downside. Now a lot of the newer Kindle books do, of course. So that's, you know, obviously Kindle. I've got it on my little dock down here because I use that pretty frequently. A lot of people use iBook, Apple's program. I don't find it's as useful because it doesn't seem to have as many books as Kindle does. Now also in that particular class, I have been using numbers spreadsheet to keep my attendance. And it's a fairly small class. There's less than 16 students always. And so I've done this just kind of experimentally. Since I know I'm going to have my iPad in there anyway, why not also then keep attendance and other things on there? And you know, I've downloaded people's pictures, so I've got that in case I needed it for some reason. And I actually have a slot for grades. I don't actually keep the grades on this one. I keep them in another place. That I feel is a little more secure. But at least it gives me a way to kind of quickly check the roll without having to carry any additional thing in. So that's the second thing I do in that particular class. There's a third thing I do in that class, which I'll show you in a minute. It's just kind of a fun thing. But some of the things that I find useful, I think you can't live without Dropbox. Dropbox quickly and easily moves files around, and for instance, Dr. Melton and I have been working on material for the capstone class, so we've got a bunch of the material that he and I have been working together on in Dropbox, so that he can add something, I can add something. It goes into your computer, and then it's available on the computer, it's available on the iPad, it's available on your iPhone, any device that is or Android or anything else, anything that's functional with Dropbox. And Dropbox they have for a lot of different programs. So that's been since I've only recently started using it. It was absolutely indispensable. I can't live without it now. I use it constantly. Now the iCloud may or may not eventually provide the same capability. We don't know. It hasn't quite gotten there yet. I just upgraded to the newest system on here, and actually I did it the day they released it, which was a bad mistake, and it briefly bricked my iPad. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be presenting this next week, and I've got a piece of plastic that isn't doing anything. But then I reran the thing, and it worked. So it was just the servers were overloaded. But obviously getting files around is valuable, and Dropbox does that great.
Do you find that you live within the 2 gig limit?
I have so far, but I don't keep very much stuff there. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Dropbox is free as long as you stay within their limit. If you go over that, you have to pay. And so far, I've not had any trouble getting down. Anybody else using Dropbox and find it's too small?
I'm up to 10.2 now.
So you're paying for more, or no? You just got more by
No, I just send it to my students.
Okay.
Send invitations.
Yes, and they'll give you more stuff. Yeah, more space. Yeah.
You can also register with your EDU email, and that will not only give you a little bit more, but also for each student that you get on there, it will give you like 500 instead of 250 megabytes. So you can get up to like 16 gigs without having to pay.
Mm-hmm. But for those who haven't used it before, most of you, many of you use it. If you haven't used it before, basically it's a way of moving files around. And you can move files around a lot of different ways. You can email them back and forth. You can connect to the computer and actually transfer them with the cable connected. But Dropbox does it wirelessly as long as you have an internet connection. It makes it very, very easy to run files back and forth. So I use that frequently. I use that all the time. The other one that I wanted to just mention that I find really quite indispensable, and it's just been upgraded so it works with iCloud, but I haven't tried it yet, is Goodreader. And Goodreader is it's just sort of an all-purpose text reader. It allows you to open almost any kind of text file. So you can see here, for instance, Christian Libel case. That's a Microsoft Word document that I created myself that I use in my media law class. I've got our faculty constitution here. So when we were talking about the faculty constitution, I just popped it on here, and I've got that. That's a Word document. I've got Jacques Ellul's Humiliation of the Word, which is a book that I've been reading for some personal research. And so the whole book is available here. I happen to find it available online in a PDF, so I've got it there. So you can do PDFs, you can do Word documents, you can do text files, and this one is actually an HTML document. It came from the internet. This is John of Damascus's theological defense of using icons for worship in the Orthodox Church, which again I've been using in some of my research that I've been working on. Again, this has been amazing to have this available, because again, it's not that you can't read any of this stuff other places, but if I'm sitting in the doctor's office waiting for 45 minutes for an appointment, I'm not going to carry a briefcase in loaded with documents. It's clunky, but I'm going to carry this in, and I do now. And so I've always got a little time. If students turn in papers electronically, you could look at, pop them on here and read them. So I think that's, again, not something you can't do without this stuff, but it's a very, very handy, if you have it, very handy tool. And I would recommend, there's several of these, but Goodreader seems to be sort of the standard. A lot of you are aware that Apple has a presentation program, Keynote. This is a media law PowerPoint that I actually created in PowerPoint in my office. on my Mac, and then I sent it over, put it on the network, and I opened it in the Humanities Center on the PC, made some adjustments to it, resaved it, and then eventually sent it to the iPad. And I did this, you can use it as a presentation program, just like you were using PowerPoint. So I didn't really do this in order to do that, because I've always got PowerPoint available. But if you didn't have it available for some reason, it's kind of handy. But I did it so that I would always have a copy of my Media Law PowerPoints on me, without, again, having to carry a printed out version. I've got my latest version is always available to me, whether I'm at a computer or not. And then if I'm looking, what am I working on this week? Is there something I need to change or modify? It's kind of nice to have that. Keynote is not so fabulous that it's going to ever replace PowerPoint, I don't think. But it has some nice features, so that's another one that I like to use. Prezi, I've got Prezi Viewer down here. If you like Prezis, you can do Prezi. You can't create Prezis on the iPad, but you can show them. So Prezi is another presentation software. But the one that I've been having a lot of fun playing around with is this one called AirSketch. And this is sort of my dream program. This is an advertisement that one of my students in my desktop publishing class did. And we've got the Clarion down here in the corner, evacuate, aliens are coming, and then it says you should have read your Clarion. So this was her ad. And what I like about AirSketch is that I can put this up on the screen and say, okay, what we were trying to accomplish with this particular assignment was to utilize a design principle that I call the semiotic triangle of advertising. If you think about advertisements, you'll see this in advertisements all the time now that I've mentioned this. You'll see this when you start looking at print advertisements. They have an image. So here's an image right here that by itself, if we didn't have anything else, wouldn't do very much, would it? It's just a picture. It's a funny picture, but by itself it doesn't really do anything. But in addition to having that image, we also have some kind of an image or picture or icon of the product. So we have an image, we got the product, and again, the two of them together are nice, but they don't really tell us very much, do they? So we've got the image in that, and then we've got what advertisers call copy, and the three of those together create this lovely triangle. And that triangle is what makes an ad persuasive to us. It connects the image to the product with the copy so that we come away with an impression of what we should do with this product. Now that's a real simple little teaching thing that I used, but it's so lovely to be able to throw a screen up there and annotate it on the fly. And that's what I love about AirSketch. It sort of turns the iPad into a sort of a poor man's smartboard, is what it's doing. Now the other thing that AirSketch does that really makes it amazing, and it's why it's a dream program for me, because I just have to dream about doing this. If you have the ability to do peer-to-peer connecting into a network, which we do not here, right? We don't have that. If you have the ability to do that, the AirSketch doesn't even have to be connected to anything. You open the AirSketch, you touch this little icon here, and it gives you an HTTP, a web address. Now, if you are allowed, which we're not allowed to use this 8080, is that right? Is that what it is? Is that what knocks it out? I don't understand the technology of it.
Internally, it would probably work from this network.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
If someone else was connected to the 10.119, they could probably get there. But if it was somebody outside, it wouldn't work.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure. I have not been able. It worked for me one day this past summer in one of my classes, and it hasn't since. But if all you do is you open a web browser on the computer, type in that address. If it works, it goes to that window, and then the window that it goes to is your iPad screen. And so I actually can do this by creating my own little local network with my Mac. And so I did it one day in class, and I was sitting in the back of the class with my iPad, and I started doing the presentation and putting notes on it and writing stuff, and it was just so much fun because it blew the students' minds. I was not connected to anything, and I could be anywhere in the room. So this is my dream program, is when at some point I think this is going to evolve to where it will be transparent and usable, and they'll find ways to do this securely. This is a security issue, isn't it? It's just kind of who can we allow to connect to what.
It is internally and externally.
Yeah, it's a security that eventually I think those problems will get solved, and when they do, we're all going to be able to enjoy that kind of technology. As I said, it's possible there's a workaround. I thought about actually bringing my laptop in and doing, but it's kind of clunky, so it takes too long to fiddle with. But it is really an enjoyable thing to do. So that's some of the ways I've been using it. It's been, I think, particularly invaluable to me in my desktop publishing class, because we do so much of this kind of thing. Somebody will design something and we'll take a look at it and start talking about it. And it's so nice for me or them to be able to draw on it and point to what they're talking about, and so that's been huge for me. And I have tried using it in my media law class, as I've showed. Had some value, some not as useful, especially because the class is so large. And then just as a research tool, it's great. You can put any kind of document on there and have it with you at any time. So those are some of the ways I'm using it. Any questions before Trevor takes on? I've got a list of the software I've mentioned, as well as a couple of other things that I'll make available for anybody who wants it. I don't know how familiar people are with all these things.
I noticed you have Evernote to use it.
What?
I noticed you have Evernote to use it.
I do use Evernote. I don't like Apple's Note program. It's a little too primitive, and it's also a little bit. I found that sometimes when you're syncing it, it will delete notes. So Evernote is. I find Evernote is. Yeah. It's just it's a note-taking software. I really haven't used it much, but I've used it a little bit, and it like Dropbox, it synchronizes across networks, so that's the nice thing about it. You can start a note at home on your iPad or on a computer, and then continue it in your office, and then finish it when you're on, at Starbucks with a Wi-Fi connection. It's the same note. The downside with all those things, with Evernote and Dropbox, is that you are placing your data in somebody else's hands. Because we don't know who runs those servers that contain the Dropbox files that I drop there. So I would never put my social security number into a Dropbox file, or something that's sensitive. I'm real picky about grades. I don't want to put grades. I mentioned I use that spreadsheet, but I don't put grades in there. So I don't really want to put things with grades into the cloud. And that may be foolish. They encrypt all this stuff and they claim it's very safe, but I just think it's better to be really hyper-conservative on these things when you're dealing with personal data and information. Okay.
Joel has an iPad 2, which the new feature with the new iOS is something called mirroring, which is what he's doing right now, which is a really cool feature that I wish I had. I have the original iPad, and so I don't have that feature. I've actually had to buy 2 iPad 2s, but my family will not let me have either of them, and so I'm still stuck with the old technology for the moment until the next one comes out. So I want to show you a couple of things. I'm curious how many of you remember this old series of ads. It was actually narrated by Tom Selleck, and everyone remembers who he is. I apologize for the quality of this, but I think you'll be able to make it out.
Have you ever borrowed a book from thousands of miles away, across the country, without stopping for directions? Or sent someone a fax from the beach? You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T. Have you ever paid?
Yeah, that's fascinating on a couple of different levels, because this is from 93, 94, and of course the AT&T that existed back then doesn't exist now. That company went defunct, and now it's owned by a completely different company, and they've just taken the name with the baby bells. But it's interesting if you watch the whole series of commercials, how many of these things actually came true. But the reason I'm showing you this commercial is because of the form factor. Notice that you know, they're talking about that sending the fax from the beach. You had a slate that they were using now, and let me kind of forward a little bit to some of the others. A lot of them use the same form factor, but there's one in particular coming up.
You will, and the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T. Have you ever had a classmate who's thousands of miles away?
So again, you can't see it too well, but it's pretty clearly, it looks just like an iPad set up just like this. I mean, this is a form factor that I think we've been dreaming about for quite a while. So why is the iPad a big deal? It can do, a computer can do anything the iPad can. A laptop can do anything that an iPad. So why is everyone kind of gone nuts? In fact, when the iPad was first released, all the critics were just saying what a lousy product this is. Why is anyone going to buy it? This is part of Steve Jobs' reality distortion field and so on. A couple of really killer features. I mean, first thing is that this thing is always on. Okay? I mean, even when you turn it off, you think you're turning it off, you're really just putting it on standby, but it's still connected to the network. And so anytime an email comes through or something like this, it knows, it beeps if I have an appointment coming up, and this is hooked up to our Outlook system. For those of you that don't have iPad, it means that if my assistant puts an appointment, it immediately asks me, do I want to confirm that appointment? 15 minutes before that appointment, it beeps at me. So this, unlike my laptop, where I'd have to open it up, boot it up, you know, get it to come up. If it was in suspend mode, wait forever for it to come up. This is instantaneous, gives me that information immediately. So that's a big deal. This thing doesn't get hot. Don't you hate how laptops get hot? You definitely don't want them in your lap, and even if they're not, this thing does not get hot as you use it. 10 hours of heavy use before the batteries drain. I mean, you can't do that with a laptop. Well, they're getting better, but it used to be, it was more like 2 hours that you get out of them. And now I think sometimes you can get 4 or 5 hours. It's small enough to keep with you. I don't carry my laptop around. I mean, I've even got a MacBook Air, and I don't carry my MacBook Air around. But this thing, I almost never leave home without it. Or, you know, I wouldn't go into a store with it. But I certainly, if I'm walking around campus, 9 times out of 10, you're going to catch me holding this thing. It's small enough that I don't go through that mental thing, am I going to need it? Right? So because I always keep it on me, it's sort of like the thing I tell my students. I tell them how important it is to keep a calendar, and then I said, how many of you actually have the calendar with you right now? And I say, well, if you don't keep it with you, it's useless. Right? And the same thing, that's what makes the form factor, I think, work. It's got the simple interface. Think about how they use this in the classroom. I don't, you know, as much as I am about technology, you might think, I hate it when they're using laptops in my classroom because, first of all, they're on Facebook or something like that, but they're behind it, right? They're hiding behind it. They've got this little thing up. It's between me and them. I don't know what they're doing, but most of the time when they have an iPad, even the way that most of you have it here, it's like this, right? It's not much of a barrier. I can kind of see what they're up to. They can still keep notes. It's not like I'm trying to catch. It feels more like they're a part of the classroom rather than they're in their little isolated cyber world. So I even like that part of the form factor. Then of course we have the cost, right? First we had laptops that were in the $1,000, $2,000 range. Then we had these little netbooks that came out that were certainly nice. But this follows the netbook model because the cheapest model comes out at $500. So I think all those pieces together is what makes this thing a big deal. I mean, you know, it's not more powerful. Most of the laptops, and I'm sure that Dell laptop is probably 10 times more powerful than the iPad in terms of the processor and all the things. But it's that form factor which I think makes the big deal, and they kind of anticipated that. And so let me show you a couple of videos. This is one that Apple has done about using it in education settings.
Are you curious about new ideas? Do you want to learn a new language? Or just a new word? Maybe you want to know more about anatomy or astronomy. You could master something new or uncover a hidden talent. There's never been a better time to learn.
Doesn't that make you want to just pick up one and play with it? I mean, it's all about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Okay, that's what we're selling, whether we realize it or not, in the classroom. And being able to have it, sorry, but being able to have that kind of capability. Let me show you, this is a longer clip by Apple, and it goes into more detail about its use in education settings. Well, apparently I don't have a full screen option, so.
The iPad has all of the world's learning in it. And access to that at your fingertips seems to open up some new door to some new knowledge. It transforms you.
Chicago Public Schools is the third largest district in the U.S. The iPad has created enthusiasm and excitement in our classrooms here at CPS. It's something that you can hold in your hands. It's not heavy. All of the applications, the access to the internet, the research that can be done, being able to outfit so many of our kids with a low-cost machine could be a real advantage for a district.
I have some students that are struggling with learning their letters and sounds, and with the SuperWire, for example, they're able to hear the letter, trace the letter, so there's a lot of repetition that's helping them catch on. What letter? E. They're spelling words that I didn't think they knew how to spell, and I'm always like, wow, who spelled that? And that guy did. Yes.
In a short amount of time, we're seeing gains as high as 50 to 60% in reading, math, and science with our classrooms using the iPads. I really believe that this is the future of education.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm in 8th grade, and the Elements app got me more interested in chemistry. I thought science was boring, chemistry just wasn't fun, it didn't make sense. But I got this app that's not written like a normal textbook. It's interactive and it's written like in a more kid-friendly way. I am a visual learner, and when I can really see the element, it helps me because then I can really visualize how it's used in everyday life.
Paul, how long did it take you to download the app?
2 days.
Everyday life.
Emma's able to go to the iPad and figure out her own learning style and her own needs, which app best meets those needs. The iPad has helped Emma learn. It's kept her engaged, and I think it's excited her.
Using the Elements app for my iPad is not required, it's not homework, but it's just fun to do, and it's extra learning. And I got an A+ in science.
My name is Malik Burnett. This is my 3rd year in medical school. I think the future of medicine is going to be not so much how much knowledge you can hold in your head, but how much knowledge you can put your hands on and access at any given point in time. The iPad expands the creativity and intellectual curiosity of students.
As a neuroscientist and as a medical educator, one of the challenges that I saw students facing constantly was just the breadth of the information that they had to master, and they had to master it so quickly. The iPad allows the student to compress 50 pounds worth of books and cards and atlases into a single application that they can carry with them. It allows students to customize that content for their own learning needs and give them a really personalized learning experience.
Instead of having to buy a new textbook every year, you can just download the most up-to-date content in real time. Then you write another chapter, you just download that chapter, replaces your old chapter. The iPad changes fundamentally the way I learn. It's kind of like my portable knowledge base. It makes life a whole lot simpler.
I am surprised by how much in a short period of time the iPad has changed how I teach. I use it literally every day. It makes the learning, I think, more accessible to the students.
We use it a lot in terms of having to pull up the internet, looking up articles, things that are relevant to what we're learning in class, the terms that we're looking up through the book. It has engaged me in the class, and it has improved my learning a lot because, you know, it's information at your fingertips.
I can, on the Inkling text, leave notes to them. It's overlaid on the content. They immediately see those notes that I leave, and they can refer back to that.
All of my experience in higher education, which totals up to almost 50 years, I've never seen anything that changed the landscape the way this has. The iPad has transformed the way our faculty are looking at learning and looking at how they transmit knowledge. It is going to make the biggest difference in the way students acquire, interact with, and use knowledge. It's a little bit like the Oxford English Dictionary must have been greeted when it first was published, and people said, oh, look at this treasure trove, or an encyclopedia. And they're both in the iPad at your fingertips. Now you have something that goes beyond anything that people could have imagined.
I'll tell you something else that's happening. There's a transformation occurring in software. When you think about it, software should be cheap, right? Because it's bits and bytes that can be easily copied, moved to place. But one of the major differences between a computer and an iPad is that when you buy software on the computer, it's going to be $50. It's going to be $40, $30 for every single app that you got. And every time you buy an app, every time you buy a software program, it weighs down your computer, right? It takes up space. Now your computer's running a little slower. It seems like the more things you add, at some point it kind of collapses under its weight. So I stopped buying things. I started kind of just doing everything on the web, and that's pretty much all I used my computer for in a lot of ways. The iPad has got me buying software again, and that's because when I buy software, it's typically, unlike the Elements book, it's 99 cents. It's $2 for most things. I've bought hundreds of programs, I'm ashamed to say, because it was so cheap. And so, yeah, I know. The trick is in volume, I suppose. But you saw these apps about learning to learn the piano or learning to Chinese. I've got a German app which teaches me vocabulary words. If I went to the bookstore right now and bought the vocabulary deck set, the flashcards, it'd easily be $20. The app was $5 and pronounces the words for me. Okay, so the fact that it's starting to make, and the reason they can get away with that is because there's so few distribution costs for the software publishers, and there's literally millions of people with these iPads, and so by having it cheap like this, they're making just as much, if not more, than they were using the old model. So again, I think this model works.
Yeah, in the utility software I have, the Keynote, Numbers, Air Sketch, I've got about $50 invested, but that's a lot of software and has a lot of capabilities for that.
Right. So some of the bigger apps do cost.
Yeah, some of them are $10 or something, but you know, even so, you're getting a lot of usefulness.
And it's funny how it changes our economy, because, you know, before when I was buying stuff for the computer, oh, $30, that's a bargain.
Yeah, it's a cheap.
But now on the iPad, it's like, well, it's more than $3? I don't know. I've got to think about it. So again, it's kind of changed the economy a little bit. But I've given you kind of some inspirational stuff. Now let me tell you what I'm actually doing with it. And again, you've got to find what technology, for the sake of technology, I think is useless. I mean, I don't want to follow that path. The idea is, what problem does it solve? And I had a huge problem. I'm director of a new marriage and family therapy program. And as part of the training for marriage and family therapists, they have to tape their sessions. Okay, so I've got 20 students that at any given time are at least 10 different locations around town. We're partnering with other churches and things like that, so they're going to be in these churches, they're going to be on campus, various places. They're going to be taping their private sessions with their clients. They're going to be bringing this back here to Lee, and now they're going to have to show clips of this as part of their supervision sessions. The supervision sessions, there's typically 6 people that are working together, and they've got to show clips from their videos. Now, before this, just imagine what a nightmare this would be. I mean, first of all, we've got to get all that equipment. Now we've got all these videotapes that are floating back and forth between all these places of people's private information, which I don't really want to be floating around all over the place. They get back here, and now they've got to queue up everything they want. And what if they want to use multiple clips from the same video, right? You know, something in 2 minutes in and something 10 minutes in. Well, with a if they're using a tape, VHS tape or whatever, VHS-C tape or whatever the small tapes are, they're going to have to fast forward to it. Not to mention, I said we've got 6 of them. They've got to each come up and plug into the system and get everything working. Supervision only lasts 2 hours. Can you imagine how much of that time is going to be taken up dealing with tech problems? Okay, so that's my problem. Here's my solution. The iPad 2 has cameras built into it. They have a camera on the front, they've got a camera in the back. You can take, and remember the great battery life I told you about? Have you ever used a camcorder to see how long you can usually get out of it? What, 30 minutes? 45 minutes? You can literally tape hours on the iPad without any problem. You can use this to tape everything. So this solves my equipment problem by making all my students buy iPads. I told them, I warned them about this in the admissions letter that I sent out to them, that they were all going to have to buy iPads, and I got not one single complaint. They all said, oh goody, believe it or not, they got an excuse to buy something that everyone else is saying, oh what a neat piece of technology. So I haven't got any complaints about that. I've also told them, you know, I can talk with financial aid to help them adjust their financial aid packages to help sort of pay for it because it is considered an educational expense, so that's part of it as well. Now this does not kick in until the beginning of summer because that's when they're practicum, so I'm still speaking in future tense. So, but this is the way the path's going so far. In fact, a lot of them already bought it simply because they wanted to have it. They didn't have to have it for another couple of months. So that solves my equipment problem. Now the next problem I had was a security problem. What's nice about the iPad is you can set it up for a suicide switch. So you can not only put a passcode on it, but if you enter the wrong passcode so many times in a row, you set that for what it is, 6 times or whatever, it will erase everything that's on your iPad. So if the iPad gets stolen, I don't have to worry that somebody's video is going to be out there sitting around. Not to mention, they also have the factor called Find My iPad. So you can go to if you've lost your iPad, you can go to any internet available computer, go in there, and send a signal to kill your iPad. And as soon as that iPad, if it's 3G, if it's connected to the cell phone network, it'll do it immediately. As soon as you connect it to, as soon as it gets into range of a wireless Wi-Fi, it'll delete it as well. So again, that solves my security problem that I had. Now, they've got something called Apple TV, which is not a TV, it's a device that you hook up to a TV. So in my supervision rooms, we have a big screen TV that we've thanks to the technology committee, had bought some Apple TVs that we're connecting to that Apple TV. So that means that all of them can be sitting right there. Oh, I've skipped a step. There's an app called iMovie that they can download. I think it's $5, that they can edit their videos in. They can take whatever clips they want and have them pre-rendered, ready to go. They can put text at the bottom of each one. So if they want to say, hey, this is a triangulation that's happening right now, they can identify it in text there at the bottom of the screen. That way they can get to it easily, or they can show it to the class. So they've got it all set up. They can do it all on their iPad. When they get into class, there's 6 of them, all with their iPads. None of them have to hook up to the computer system. This is what makes it so neat. They, right there from their lap, when they say, okay, Joel, could you show me that 2-minute triangulation clip that you were talking about? He hits play, and it immediately comes up on the TV behind us so they can see. So there's no, this gets around the technology problem, right, of trying to set it up and get everything going. And now we can focus on supervision issues, not on what format is the video and how do we get it to play, right? Which is the whole point of why we're doing all this, is to get to the teaching part. So that's what excites me about this, and that's one of the things we're using the iPad for. Another thing that we're using the iPad for is to allow them to, they take their therapy notes using the iPad system. So we've gone completely paperless. This is the new HIPAA requirement that things need to be online records, and so we have contracted with an online provider where all of our records are online. They can use the iPad as an interface. They don't have to. They can use a regular computer for an interface as well. But the interface has a series of checklists where they can comment on the person's condition, their symptom improvement, just by hitting checklist. Then there's a narrative, so they'll type in a paragraph, they hit submit, and that immediately sends it to the supervisors, which the supervisors can then look at and approve it or not, and then they click OK. And again, these are all encrypted. There's encryption between the iPad, and so if the iPad doesn't actually hold the record. So if the iPad gets stolen, I don't have to worry about the fact that someone's going to be able to access these encrypted records. So it solves my security issue. Now, there's training, obviously, that's involved with my students. I have to teach them how to set up the iPad correctly. We have to set up the online system. So there's certain safeguards in place, so it's not quite as simple as I'm selling it, but the fact is the potential's there to do it right, so I'm excited about that.
And there's very little on the iPad that is complicated. You know, it's designed to be a relatively simple system, and most software, some of the things I was showing, a good reader will do a whole lot of things that I don't do. But for the basic things that you need to do, you can learn it in 2 minutes and you're using it.
Absolutely.
That's a nice advantage to it.
And let me, take me just a second to type in the web address here I want to show you about. This is another app that I'm making use of, and it's called TagPad. It's free. It doesn't cost me anything, doesn't cost my students anything. And I think it's the University of San Diego that has made this available. Yeah. Basically what this is, we are doing research interviews as part of both their clinical practice and in terms of research they're also doing for marriage and family therapy work. And you can create an interview pretty easily on the software, while at the same time you're recording the interview using your iPad. So you can ask them, what did you think how do you think your group did? And they can give you the narrative that's being recorded on the iPad. At the same time, you can code it. You can say, well, they're saying it was good, bad, or okay, at the same time that it's recording it. And all this is being time-stamped. So later on, if you want to go back and go to that particular part of the interview, if you say, okay, I'll hit 1.3 for client 3, you'll be able to hear what they actually said, but you've already got it coded at the same time. I mean, talk about a great research tool. Free, right? And being that I've already required the MFT students to have it, I can depend on the fact that they've got this, and so I can require all of them to go off and do it. And this uses Dropbox as an output device, and so they can drop it into Dropbox and they can share that folder with me. So I have immediate access, so I don't have the problem of them having to email me the files and will it fit the file limit or file size or anything like that. It's just all there. So that's something I'm excited about. Haven't used it yet. Again, we're kind of gearing up for it, but that's something in mind. There's a software program called CourseSmart. I'm using a brand new text in the spring for my intro site class, Site 200. And it's an online text. I've used online text for about 3 years now. I always ask my Site 200 students, why do they prefer the online text? I mean, one reason is it's cheaper. It's about half the cost as the regular text. That's obviously an advantage. There's also extra features. There's multimedia features that make the book a little bit more interesting. There's practice quizzes and things like that. So I'd ask them, do you prefer the e-book compared to the regular book? I thought I'd get maybe half and half. 95% of them said they preferred the e-book, and they were glad that they used the e-book for the class. Then I would ask them, well, why did you prefer it? And I thought the major reason would be because it was half the cost. But very few people said that. And the vast majority of them said it's because of the extra features that they had all for the e-book. Well, the new ebook that I'm using has a free app that they can download into their computer, which does quizzing. So I can assign sets of questions, and the questions are automatically pushed to their iPad. Now, they don't have to have this. They don't have to have an iPad. They can do this on their computer, so I'm not requiring my Site 200 students to have an iPad, right? Don't walk away with that idea. But the fact is, those that have either an iPhone or an iPad can download this app, and they've got this built in, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything extra than the textbook that they've already purchased. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to work out. I just letting you know that that's available. That's available for a lot of different intro textbooks, not just psychology. There's also something called CourseSmart. Do you use CourseSmart?
I have not.
CourseSmart is one of the major, a lot of the major publishers, particularly Pearson and McGraw-Hill.
Look at it a little bit, but I really use
it. Is Cengage on there? I don't remember if Cengage is, but this is where a lot of major textbook publishers are putting their e-text for people to use. And as faculty members, we can request pretty much any text that we want for free. And actually, I feel a little guilty sometimes requesting a text for free, especially if I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to use it for a class. And I think, well, it might be interesting, but I'm not really. Now I'm going to increase the cost for the students. When I request it during CourseSmart, it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't cost me anything. I pretty much have, I'd say about 80% of the textbooks that I use in any given year are available in CourseSmart. That means I carry it around with me, and I can annotate it, I can highlight it, put anything I want on it, and it's just right here. So that's really handy, having that extra piece around. Students can buy their text on CourseSmart, and typically the text is about half the price than it would be if they bought it in the bookstore. In fact, I've actually had one text that was $175 if you buy a print version. It's $60 on CourseSmart. And it happens to be an MFT text, which is perfect because they've already got iPads. And so I'm definitely going to encourage the students to go that path. Now, something I'm very uncomfortable with, most of the CourseSmart texts expire. So they're buying access only for a limited period of time. I know this is a hot issue in library sciences, and I hate it. It drives me nuts. So I'm very uncomfortable with that, and I wish that's something that changes in the future. The last one I want to mention to you guys is a software program I'm just starting to use called Moodle. And I know a couple of you use it on a regular basis. Moodle is more than just an app. Spelling it right. No. I spell it Moodle.
That should be right.
Let me just log in and show you. That's probably the easiest way. So I will sign in. I will put in my credentials. This is a free service. Up to a certain point, you can only hold so much storage for free, but so far I haven't run across the restrictions. But it organizes my PDFs. So any PDFs that I might be using for research that I'm doing, or research for one of my classes, there we go. And I will go to my library. And my papers will follow me around no matter where they are. So I can input a paper on my iPad, and now it's going to be on the desktop app or the web app. So it's following around wherever it's at. So here's, I'll go to, I've sort of categorized them, and this one is an MFT training. Come up here. And so I can click on this, and it will give me the full reference information about that particular article, but I can also see the whole PDF, and it stores it for me online. Now, this is telling me why I don't like desktop stuff as much anymore, because it's constantly asking you questions. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? On my iPad, I press the button, poof, it's there. And so if I want to read that article, it immediately comes up on my iPad, follows me around all over the place. I can annotate it, I can add stuff to it. So it's a new thing. Did you use it for your dissertation, or
to organize my book?
Yeah, and you can also use it to print out your references if you're writing a paper. So it's a Citation Manager as well. So those are the apps I tend to be using the most. So.
And that is it holds that. There's not a time limit. It doesn't expire.
It doesn't expire. Well, unless the company goes bankrupt, but it doesn't expire. But it does have a megabyte limit until you have to start paying.
Yeah, it's PDF, so it's not.
Yeah, I mean you have to get quite a few on there before you're going to get that limit.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Well, Joel, if you'll come back up here, we can answer any questions people have. Or
I read an article this morning in InfoWorld, which they talked about IS&T's managers' responses to a survey about mobile devices. And they said that they found iOS devices, which are Apple's devices, are the easiest to support, that BlackBerries were kind of in the middle, and all the Android devices were at the bottom. And the reason is because there's so many Android systems out there. They're all different. They're all open. People can do anything with them. So some of this sounds a little bit like an Apple sales pitch, but there are some actual reasons why Apple has become kind of dominant in this area, and some technical reasons as well as others. So what are some of you guys using, those who are using them? Any other apps that we need to know about?
I've heard about an app called Splash that you use it like a slate. So if you don't even have an active board, you can, you know, annotate on your iPad and it shows up on the chalkboard, I guess, whiteboard,
Well,
projection,
it
whatever.
doesn't have to be, does Splash have to be connected? Wired? No. How do you use it then?
I haven't done
It's wireless. I
I've
know
heard
we-
of it, but I haven't used it.
We have student teachers at Cleveland Middle School, and they don't have active boards, and she's using it.
A lot of you know that I use the iClickers in my classrooms, and particularly my Cite 200 course. With my MFT program, since they've already got iPads, there's something called eClicker. See if they get sued with that or not. But it's free for the students for their version of it. For me as the instructor, it cost me all of $10. And that basically allows the exact same capabilities where they can vote in class and you can see the results up here on the top.
Voting by iPads, we get everybody an iPad.
Right. And it saves them the money of having to buy a clicker or bring it. You know, they've got a single device that's able to do it. So.
But how's it getting you?
Wi-Fi.
Good Wi-Fi. Because there are internet sites that'll do like let people send text votes.
Yes.
So they can send it from their phone, do text surveys. I'm going to show one other thing that I've been enjoying. It's not really an educational piece particularly, but if you're not familiar with, if you have an iPad, Media Overdrive allows you to go to a library if you have a card and search for ebooks and check them out for 2 weeks. So this is Hamilton County's website. Hamilton County has about 750 books available, but many of them are current bestsellers, very popular titles. They have audiobooks as well as ebooks. Cleveland Public Library participates in a system called Tennessee Reads, which has over 10,000 ebooks available. But it's a little harder to check them out because you're in
a free, easy-to-use application, which allows you to enjoy digital titles anytime.
It's on silent. How does it do that? When if I do talk when it's on silent. Can you answer that question for me?
Tennessee Reads is statewide, so there's a lot of libraries that participate in it. So it's a little harder to get books because they're often checked out. But if you have an iPad and or even a home computer, you can do it on there. You want to browse the library and see what they've got available electronically. To me, it's like living in a science fiction world. You know, I'll be sitting on my back porch reading New York Times review of books, see a book that sounds interesting, hit Media Overdrive, check, and sure enough, there's a copy available. Hit it. It downloads, and I start reading it. And I've never even gotten up out of the rocking chair. You know, it's kind of like those AT&T ads. You know, we were really living in a
There's a clip in the AT&T ad with Jenna Elfman, who's actually calling up on the payphone to see her baby, tuck her in. So there's a little telephone. You probably remember it, or you've seen that clip. And what's interesting, okay, they show them sticking the AT&T card into the payphone so she can pay for the video card. And this is, I think, one of the reasons AT&T went bankrupt. They didn't quite see what was going to happen. Because first of all, there's no payphones anymore, right? And second of all, the video is not costing anything. So my daughter has her iPad 2 in China, and I'm telecommunicating with her with our iPads on a regular basis, not costing an extra penny. And so, yeah, it really does feel like a science fiction world, and it's a cheaper world than I thought it was going to be. So
yeah. Anything else anybody use in this? This is the other one that I use quite often. I have a couple of Bible programs. This one is Net Bible. It's got, you have to be online to use it, but it's got the text of the Bible on one side, and it's not one of the standard versions. It's a translation. It's been done by a group of scholars. But on the other side, you've got notes, and these are translation notes, which are interesting. You can also, if you want to, get the Greek or Hebrew text parallel to it, and as well as links to articles about the passage that you're working on or interested in. And most of these will open to websites. it's just again, just an amazing tool that's out there. And a lot of people use the Bible program. This one's nice because it has more translations than you could ever use. So, frequently, if you're doing, I pretty much carry my iPad for devotionals now and use them for reading scripture in class. It's just a handy way to have it available without carrying the Bible, in addition to all the other stuff that I carry around the campus. So just a couple of other things that I find terrifically useful. This particular program, the ones that have the little green icon, you can download them onto the iPad and use them anywhere, read them anywhere. The ones that don't have a little green icon, you have to actually be online to use. So it's just kind of a copyright thing. NIV won't allow you to, and this one won't allow you to download most of the other versions. So,
for those of you that don't have iPads yet or don't know about this, the new version of the iOS that was just released, which again is free, allows you connection to what they call the iCloud, which allows you to pretty much back up your data from your apps at no charge. It backs it up on a daily basis. Everyone keeps fussing at us for not backing up our data. We've got it on our laptops or something like that. Now this is doing it automatically for us. And so if you were to lose your iPad, all you have to do is get a new one, log in with your credentials, and it will download all your stuff back on it as if you hadn't lost it. So, very nice.
It also has photos, which I haven't tried yet, but if you have a newer iPhone, my iPhone's too old to do it. If you have a newer iPhone, anytime you take a picture with it, it'll automatically stream to the cloud and then stream down onto your computer, so you don't have to connect and transfer it.
Same with iTunes.
What?
Same with iTunes. Any,
Yeah,
any
iTunes
music
also
you download,
stream,
it'll put it on every device you
library
have.
and stream anywhere. We've exhausted something. Some way.
Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.